Welcome to Melt University. This series will help you build your brand, inform you on a variety of career paths, and introduce you to top executives in sports and marketing. Now, here's your host, the president and CEO of Melt, one of the largest independent sports and event marketing agencies in the country, Vince Thompson.
Welcome back, students. Virtual Melt University. We are shaking and jiving, moving through a semester. Hopefully, you're able to get back on campus a little bit. Hopefully, you're able to get in some of the classrooms a little bit. We've tremendous feedback and response from our guests. We've got a very special guest this week. One of my all-time favorites, both professionally and personally. He's going to talk a lot about the value of not only building relationships, maintaining relationships. Going to talk about what he sees as career opportunities in the world of college sports in a post-COVID world, but he's also on the front lines in the epicenter of it. My friend Steve Hogan is the Chief Executive Officer of Vrbo Citrus Sports. And you'll ask what that is. He's a huge job. Been doing it for quite a while. One of the best in the business. They own, promote, and manage two of the top nation's postseason bowl games: the Cheez-It Bowl and the Vrbo Citrus Bowl. He hosts the Camping World Kickoff college football, similar to the ones that we talked about with Gary Stokan here in Atlanta. The Florida Classic HBCU game. We talked a lot about HBCU, the ACC Championship, NFL preseason, NFL Pro Bowl. And I think you guys will find today's conversation very good and very enlightening. So, Steve, welcome to Virtual Melt University.
Hey, Vince, really appreciate you having me on. Any university, Vince, that would be willing to bring me on, I just feel honored. But pardon jest. I was a good student, not a great student,
right?
But I'm very appreciative and have so much respect for what you do and everything that you're trying to do to help the next generation get an opportunity in sports. Thank you.
Well, I might even call you Dr. Hogan here in a little bit. But trivia note. My Auburn Tigers, and I got to make sure I had the year right because I was in SID, played in the Tangerine Bowl in 1984, as I recall. It was either 83 or 84. And I happened to attend that game as a student assistant at Auburn University. So one of my favorite, I think that's correct. I think I still have one of my friend's jerseys from that game. I'll have to dig it up in all of my spare time. But you've got a tremendous career. Orlando obviously has and is and will continue to be one of the epicenters of these events. Obviously, with your leadership, with proximity to Disney, the fact that you've been able to do it at this level without a tremendous corporate base, such as the one that we have in Atlanta, is also a testament. But throwing it all the way back, you actually played football at UCF, and the Tennessee Vols have raided the cupboard down in UCF. We'll see what happens on that. But then coming out of Central Florida, began your career with McCaw Communications. Now, was that in the early days of the cellular business? Was that Craig McCaw?
No, it was. Yeah, the very same one. Because Cellular One was more a recognizable brand, and it grew from there. It was the largest cellular provider at the time in the country, and so it was a lot of fun. First job out of college, and helped pay the bills. But I think in life you all have to sell, no matter what you're doing, and it was my opportunity to be a part of the sales mechanism.
Yeah, we'll talk about that too, because those are wise words. And then you joined the association in '95. And then became CEO in 2006. But before we get into all of this fascination, we sort of like to throw it all the way back to where your original passion for what you do and where it emanated. And I did not realize you were a student athlete at the University of Central Florida. So you obviously had a passion for sports. You had a passion for playing. And I don't know if you had grown up in Florida, but we always like to find out where this passion for what people do, where it really kind of originated.
It's interesting for me. I was a student, big student, really small athlete. And I was a part of a team with Gene McDowell's our head coach and Mike Kruzik and But I got to watch a lot of good players do their thing at practice. I'll say that. But
right.
I grew up, I was born in Chicago, but my family moved down here when I was about 10 years old to Florida. Grew up most of my, formative years in Florida. Went to UCF, and my first job out of college, as we just said, was at McCaw Communications, because that was the first opportunity I had to get paid doing anything. So I wasn't tracking out of UCF and out of being a part of an athletic program there as a student to be in sports management. In fact, it wasn't really a focus. There wasn't an opportunity in those days really to have full graduate degree opportunities and prepare yourself for administration. Oftentimes it were folks that were past coaches of a certain sport and just ended up becoming athletic directors. And so that kind of opportunity wasn't there for me. So I found my way into the industry after working in corporate life for a few years, and an opportunity opened up in Orlando. And again, this is, I talk about relationships a lot. I think the biggest thing you can learn as a student is how important it's going to be for you to foster and develop relationships, with other students. You don't know where they're going to go, what job they're going to have in the future, and how they may be able to help you, and vice versa. You certainly should take every advantage of this university, and two, internships, seasonal opportunities. Again, I just think relationships are massive. We happen to have a family relationship that somebody worked at Florida Citrus Sports. They had an event manager opening. And I just sat back and said, I really just do not enjoy getting out of bed, going to work every day. I don't love what I'm doing. That's no way to live, know. And so I think you just got to look at yourself and understand what makes you happy. And I just took this opportunity. I had to take a pay cut. In 95, I was leaving sales, and I took this little event manager job as an entry-level spot. And I just realized, several months into that this is what I love to do. I love to be able to create something, be a part of it from beginning to end, look back and see the fruits of your labor, work in a collegiate kind of environment, a culture within an office. I think sports oftentimes, whether it be pro or otherwise, you kind of have this collegial nature, this teamwork, this team-oriented, everybody gets their hands in everything kind of spirit. And I just loved it. And, so from there, I built a passion for it. And I think that you got to be passionate if you're going to be successful.
Well, and let's go back to that, because, what as and you employ a lot of people, I employ a lot of people as an entrepreneur. And what I was beginning to see prior to COVID is it was such a seller's market for talent that these young kids, I sound like my parents now, but they wanted to get in and immediately have instant gratification. They wanted to be the CEO. And if they didn't get that way, or had some kind of, rough encounter with a boss or a coworker or a client, they just scream out the door after 2 or 3 months, not realizing that I invested a lot of time, money, energy, and resources. And I think now with COVID, it's going to be a buyer's market for talent. And there's going to be a little bit of a rude awakening for this generation. And I'm not so sure, in the spirit of silver linings, that's not a bad thing for this generation of employees, because you and I just had to roll up our sleeves and grind. And by the way, we still grind. So talk about that a little bit for a minute.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And there seems to be, at least in sports, still today, I mean, there's a long line of people ready to sign up for opportunities. I think that's still true. It was true then.
Right.
It's true now. Would do just about anything to get in. But I think you're touching on something about when you get in, the patience or the focus and the lack thereof, being patient and wanting everything to happen tomorrow is not something that is, one, based in reality. And two, I think it does a disservice to the company giving you an opportunity, and I think to you as a person who wants to pursue a successful career. So I think COVID is, for sure, it is absolutely a buyer's market. There's a ton of talent out there. There's more coming each day that are graduating, this summer that we can get the best and the brightest at just about any position. And I think you can get the best and brightest from an attitude perspective, from a cultural fit perspective. And so I think that's, kind of a word of caution. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be focused on what you want out of your career
Bingo.
and
Right.
wanting to grow, wanting to create and see new opportunities. You should have that vision for you. Nobody's telling you not to be competitive and not to
Touche. Right.
have this drive and to be whatever you want to be in life. But I think you need to put in the time, develop the right relationships, understand what about yourself makes you happy. Because I'm a firm believer in this. If you're not happy what you're doing,
Bingo.
you're not happy with the people you're working with doing it, you're just gonna fail, right? Certainly gonna fall short of what you would define as success. So I think it's so important really to understand yourself, be committed to the people that gave you that opportunity. And what you'll find, and I think Vince, you'd say this, we as people who hire all the time, you're going to be the biggest cheerleader, the biggest supporter of that rock star employee you have getting where they want to go.
100%.
And there's just a process to that. And if you do it right, then people like you and I are going to help you get there, even if that
100%.
means you got to leave in a few years, because that happens all the time. There's just so many spots.
Correct.
But I agree 1,000%.
So, and you talk a lot about relationships, and we talk to our kids a lot about relationships. And my thing that I talk to them about is that a relationship is like a flower or a plant. You've got to cultivate it, groom it, water it, fertilize it, give it sunshine, trim it. And we say the first two letters of relationship are RE, and the first two letters of reciprocal are RE. Talk to our kids about your philosophy on relationships, because Steve, when I was driving Dig Vitale, Brent Musburger, and Paul Feinbaum around Auburn in like 1982, and I'm still doing business with them now 40 years later, but it has to be a two-way street.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And that's authentic. I think that anybody in life can see and feel and understand when a relationship is reciprocal, and can see when somebody is clearly more in it for the me than the re, right? As you suggest.
Yeah,
And,
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, and so you just, if you're just authentic with people and you're in it to develop a true relationship, everything else takes care of itself. I mean, there's thousands of examples and stories where I've seen that to be true.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's like you and I, like we have a great respect for one another. We may not see each other once or twice a year, but if you called me and said, "Hey, I got a kid I want you to look at in Atlanta," or vice versa, I'm obviously going to take the call and say, "Hey, anything you need, Steve." So I think that particularly in our industry, it's so small. I mean, you got to, but my old man says, "Son, that ball turns in a circle 24/7." I mean, them you meet on the way up, you're going to get them on the way down. But so also, before we kind of leave this topic, I have been blessed my entire life to have tremendous mentors. David Housel, long-term mentor, SID at Auburn. Talk to our kids about the importance of mentors, but talk about the importance of the right mentor and the importance of treating that mentor as gold, because I don't want a mentor that's going to sugarcoat anything to me. I want to be knocked across the head with the advice.
Yeah, I think again that some of that is just your personal preference, right? There's people that have had really successful football coaches that some would view as pretty rough, right? And there's others that have a totally different approach, and they're both very successful. So I think some of that is going to be your personal, the way that you respond and thrive, from a mentor. It is a lot like a coach, right, or a parent. And so I think, again, you want to look at somebody that you have respect for, that you believe, is a person of high character. They've done it the right way. They got the right relationships. You can see that they're willing to help you get where you want to go. I think all those things matter in a mentor. And so to your point, I mean, if they see that you're authentically invested in doing things the right way, and you've got a vision for where you want to go, they're more than happy to help you get there.
Right.
And so I think that's the moral of the story. But you need to find somebody who fits your personal desire, whether that's tough love or
Right.
whether that's kind of letting you learn things a little bit on your own and giving you a bump when you've kind of gone off course a little bit. But I think to each their own. But nonetheless, it's got to be somebody who you've looked at where they are, how they've gotten there, and you found a fit there. Then you really got to invest the time and energy and effort it takes, to kind of build that relationship and desire for them to help provide you that mentorship that you seek.
So you sit in an epicenter of leadership in college athletics, college football, and so and some of the great bowl games and kickoff games, and like I said, Orlando, the center of the universe. Two or three things, and we've gotten some very interesting information and suggestions. We've interviewed some great athletic directors and bowl directors and things of that nature. And we have learned that there's a lot of great new career paths, like whether it be mental health, whether it be data analytics, whether it be fan analytics. Obviously, going forward now, what is the new standard for fan experiences in sports? Where you sit, and we like to say that the college is the ultimate professional laboratory, and the students need to look all around them for these opportunities. From the perch you occupy, where should these kids, let's assuming we're coming out of COVID at some point, but where should they be looking to equip themselves to pitch or audition for a job with Steve Hogan for the Florida Citrus Sports, or ask you for a recommendation? Where are these opportunities where you see them?
Well, I mean, so if you talk about the best way to access or find opportunities, I think, I talk to students all the time about, again, back to, you should be doing, if you haven't already, you should be doing your homework in terms of opportunities, building relationships from where you sit all over the country. You don't have to do an internship there. You don't have to be working there.
Right.
To be working on a relationship, getting to know them, even if they're not hiring, getting them to be aware of you. You should be out there developing those channels right now. And again, if you have the time and you haven't graduated yet, even if there's not a formal internship, can I volunteer for you?
Bingo.
So those are critical things. But having said that, I think it's so important these days to develop your, certainly your LinkedIn, your social network, lean hard into those that are willing to help you develop that network. I find a lot more employees by talking to Vince or shooting out a post that somebody read that sends me somebody that they think highly of than I ever would in the old Bible. Any sort of Indeed or job posting mechanism.
Right.
Somebody might pursue. Most all of our hires are relationship oriented. And
you just hit the nail on the head.
What's that?
You just hit the nail on the head. It's relationship driven. It's that warm lead. And one reason that we've been doing what we've been doing is, if somebody hears Steve Hogan on a podcast and then they reach out to you on LinkedIn and say, hey, by the way, Mr. Hogan, I heard you on Vince Thompson's podcast. Congrats on your success. And I'd love to connect with you and establish a relationship. Of course, you're going to respond to that versus some generic, unprepared outreach to you to a generic website, on your website, right?
For sure. Yeah, it just doesn't, there's not enough time, to do it that way anymore. And by the way, there's just such a wealth of available candidates.
Bingo.
Through relationships these days. And many like us, we have full-time paid seasonals that we bring in every summer. They're working for us for 6 months. And, I got all the candidates I need right there if I actually have a permanent full-time spot open. So, I think to your point, even if that individual who might have 1,000 contacts on their social channel, even if they don't one-to-one respond to you, they're going to see your name. Right. And they're going to see that it was associated with somebody that they know. It doesn't mean that they're not paying attention. So I think you're absolutely right. Tying that to a relationship that you have in common, that's going to be your best path to a job these days, other than being just a complete again, pain in the butt is I'm using that affectionately, but you can't just stop it. I tried once and nothing ever happened.
Oh my God.
NBA team didn't give me a job. You got to be there and on them, because trust me, the squeaky wheel will get the grease, and so you need to be committed to it.
You are you're hitting on all of the points that we talk to these kids about. Be relentless. I used to say prior to COVID, it was a fishing analogy. You're going to have to make 100 casts to get 8 job leads to get 2 interviews. I think that number is going to be around 500 now.
Totally.
And but you hit on something that we talk to our kids about, because no matter, and again, coming back, hopefully we get to the other side of normal or new normal, whatever that is. But in every town or city, there are events going on, whether they're bowl games or kickoff games or golf tournaments or whatever they are. And those are prime areas to volunteer. I mean, I'm positive you have a massive volunteer base for all the events and major events that you're going on. And if a kid will roll up their sleeves, get them some business cards, start building those relationships, even have an opportunity to have a 2-minute quote unquote chance encounter with you where they make that eye to eye and they drive that impression in. How many volunteers does it take to run one of the typical major events that you put on?
Hundreds. There's and there's gradient scales of volunteerism. Sometimes that's for the extent of the event. Sometimes that's the days leading up to the event, and there's a multitude of hospitality events that people need to staff hours here or there, working in a hospitality room, or it just goes on and on and on, right? So there's hundreds. But you're so right. Those are opportunities you can be relentless for and get, and you will meet the people that you want to meet. And I can take that a step further. Most organizations, and again, you can't do this 100 times over, but most organizations, if you reached out and I've said, you know what, can I just have 30 minutes? Can I just come meet somebody at your office? I know you're not hiring. I just would really benefit from a conversation and just learning from you what your company does. They'll do it. They will. And they just got to find the time. You got to be a little bit more persistent, but they want to give you that. They know that they don't have a job. You're coming without the expectation of having a job, but they want to give you whatever knowledge they have. And I would encourage you to take advantage of that.
Right. No, I think you just hit the nail on the head. So going forward out of post-COVID, couple of questions. Where do you think that attendance will come back? I mean, we're already having a little bit of a slippage in college football on attendance. Will fans come back? And if they do, what are their expectations going to be about their experience at the Cheez-It Bowl or at the Citrus Bowl or at the kickoff game?
No, I do. I think fans will come back. I think that there's market forces in a lot of sports, by the way, or meetings and conventions or any other kind of live in-person business you might be in. I think that there's market forces that you're dealing with year in and year out anyway on attendance. So let's just put that aside, because you can spend all day talking about that. One team is more excited how they finish, another one's on the way down. There's COVID related, all these kind of things come into play. But I do think when we get through this, we're gonna have our fans back. I think people hunger for it, they crave it. We just ran a national cheer competition in December, in the middle of COVID, going, should we really be doing this? Should we partner on this to help? We're working with the Pop Warner National Championship, and lo and behold, 5,000 people are here in the height of the pandemic. And you're like, so if it tells you anything about the need for people to get out and be active, and of course that's youth sports, but again, live events, we're seeing it. People are clamoring for that opportunity to be together, be outside. So I think it's going to be back. Now, are there going to have to be innovations that you carry forward, to your point? Yes. I think the in-stadium production, I think the multi-channel experience you can keep people, even while they're in the stands, is going to be really important. How are you innovating? How are you bringing that screen in their palm into their building? Do you have the right connectivity that is required to successfully engage in content on game day? That was already important before COVID. I think it's even more important, when you get past COVID. So I think it'll be back, but you're going to have to invest heavily in that engaging, especially for the younger audience, You're going to have to touch. Then I'm excited about NIL for a lot of those reasons in college athletics. When I think we get there, it just opens up a whole other door of engagement that you can now do that the sport's not doing. That I think is going to incentivize more of this stuff from a live perspective.
Well, it was a perfect segue because I was going to ask you, your thoughts on NIL, and then, I'm very bullish on it. I've been around student athletes since I set foot on the Auburn campus in 1980, and I know there's huge pros and cons, and obviously it's in the Supreme Courts, it's in Congress, and all that. But I think it's also going to create an opportunity for not only we all focus on the Trevors of the world, but a lot of these non-revenue Olympic sports. It's going to put some good money in the pockets. It could save these sports within athletic departments under budget pressure. And for the students, because these kids are already they're the most sophisticated generation of consumer there is. They're digital natives. But from where you sit, don't you think that that's going to create a whole nother set of career opportunities for our college students?
Oh my God, absolutely. Right. I mean, I think you just look at the audience now and you just look at the creativity, the content generation. If you look at how that needs to be monetized, how both for representation side, if you will, for the student athlete and how that's being fostered and taking incoming opportunities and turning those into successful ventures for both the student athlete and the corporate partner. I think all those things that exist right now in really honestly in a pro environment that you're all too familiar with is going to be very important moving forward in this space. So you got all these new customers. And so I think there's going to be a ton of opportunities out there, especially for students to want to work potentially in this space. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to work with student athletes before it gets so commercialized.
Right.
There's plenty of places for them to go. The top players essentially could go to a Vince Thompson and Melton and have somebody representing them and fielding all these opportunities. But there's going to be dozens and dozens of student athletes that could nonetheless have successful ventures that students could actually create a bit of a learning opportunity and a small business out of. And I think that's the opportunity I'd be excited for. As you suggest, these digital natives that are so content oriented, they already get that. And can bring that center of excellence to their friends, really, and classmates in this case, and build some new businesses out of it.
Well, think of the irony. You've got Miley Cyrus hosting a pregame Super Bowl show on TikTok, right? I mean, like that's where and this generation drove that popularity of TikTok. So I think, like I said, I think if you don't lose anybody you love, I think we're going to enter a golden age of ingenuity and innovation in this generation. Steve, back in the day, and maybe not you, but me, I had to go to the library and get an encyclopedia and get yellow pages and get reference books to figure this out. They possess this information at the palm of their hands. And to that point, and I'm a massive advocate of LinkedIn. It's been really, really good for my business. If somebody reaches out to you via your email or your corporate website or LinkedIn, my pet peeve is somebody sending a generic email to a generic website that says, here's my resume, I need to make $1. It is not hard to find out where I am and how to get me and who I am and make an emotional connection, play to my ego, generate that warmth. What gets your attention if a young student reaches out on, say, LinkedIn, and you get 1 million requests and you're busy and you're not on LinkedIn all the time. But I say, hey, this is not an application. It's a process. It's an audition. You've got the amount of time it takes to pass a billboard on the interstate to get Steve Hogan's attention. What gets your attention?
Yeah, for sure. I very rarely, I don't think I have ever paid attention to inbound requests or openings of jobs or here's my resume. I don't remember. I'd have never opened one of those
ever.
But I have engaged, not 100% of the time, but I have engaged when partners, Vince Thompson said, hey, I've got this really great student, did amazing things for us. Could you give that person 15 minutes, not for a job at FCS, but they just want to build their network, understand, learn your perspective of the industry? You're going to do that. And, or they may have found me at an event we were doing and walked up and introduced and asked the same question. I'm going to do it. And so they, going that route, looking to gain knowledge, have a conversation, borrow a few minutes of time to build your expertise or your wisdom is the easiest way into anybody. You probably could work hard enough on the most famous people in sport and maybe, you likely could get an opportunity. If really all you were looking for is, can I just benefit from a few minutes of your knowledge as I try and build my career? I'm not asking for a job. I'm not looking for an interview. I just want to hear from you. You'll get it. And that's where I've responded the most. And it's usually because somebody teed up that ask, but you're going to do it every single time.
Right. Now, and I think you're spot on about that. So as we wrap up this tremendous conversation, I always like to ask our guests, like, are there any books that you've read in the past, or inspirational quotes or inspirational figures, or podcasts that you would recommend? We get a lot of great, we've gotten several with John Wooden and several with Dale Carnegie, but any source or resource, subject matter that you would recommend that they read or listen to or watch that you have done in the past?
Honestly, I can't point at any. I've read Elon Musk's book and other people. I'm fascinated by highly successful visionary people. So yes, I'll spend some time looking at that. But for the most part, I love looking at the sports industry inside periodicals and different stories. And I also love grabbing a few minutes, and I'm blessed enough, you're blessed enough in our careers that we're around some highly successful people and, famous coaches, commissioners of leagues, television execs and personalities, corporate heads. I like to do what we're telling the students to do. I go and grab as much time as I can with those folks and just try and understand their approach. And that's really honestly what I prefer to do, Vince. Not that I don't find value in reading, I do, and I recommend it highly. But the bulk of my reading is in periodicals, digitals, online, industry-related news, innovations in the space, more so than particular podcast or book or anything of that nature. So.
Yeah, I want to learn what's going on, and I want to learn who is driving it. So if I read an announcement like you've announced a new sponsor or something like that, I'm analyzing this for information that might be relevant to my core business, and that's the same thing that we counsel our students on. And then to your point, you're just never too old to learn. So I still love sitting down with Coach Bill Battle and Rick Jones and, all the Ben Sutton and all the great ones. And I just really love to glean, their insight. And I always take a little nugget out of it. But this has been such an amazing conversation. To our listeners, to our students, I knew you guys were going to enjoy my dear friend, Steve Hogan, Chief Executive Officer of Florida Citrus Sports, the Cheez-It Bowl, the Vrbo Citrus Bowl, college kickoff game with Camping World, HBCU, and he's in the epicenter damn near every event that goes on in the Orlando community. And I hope you guys will reach out. But Steve, thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom with the students of Virtual Melt University. And I hope at some point I get to see you again and break bread with you.
Well, brother, I hope so too, and I know that we will. And I would ask you too, students, if you want, go on to fcsports.com, take a look at what we do. We're in the middle of a $60 million upgrade again into Camping World Kickoff. Especially take a look at liftorlando.org, which is an organization I, along with 3 other people, founded 7 years ago. We've invested $100 million in the poorest zip code of Orlando, around the stadium area, that invested in affordable housing, education, health and wellness, and access to jobs. Take a look at where we are 7 years later, and really what I think is the future of social justice investments through sports and entertainment. But anyway, thanks for that.
Well, sports. But by the way, I don't know if you remember this. But I think maybe me and Rick came down to see you, but you walked me around and laid that entire vision out. And the hell, that had to have been 10 years ago at least.
You're so right. I'm shocked you remember that, but here we are. We formalized it about 7 years ago now, and essentially we built 2 phases of mixed income affordable housing. We're just about to open a $9 million state-of-the-art, best in the country Boys and Girls Club. We have our first class in a $13 million early education building. Soon to open a 30,000 square foot health and wellness building and a $9 million park with an NFL Play 60 field and Bay Hill putting course and everything else. So it's a blast. You should come see it when you're in town next. I think you'd be proud.
Well, in closing, you have hit on sports now is the metaphor for a lot of tremendous change. And I think that you are one of the leaders of redefining what it means to have a sports and sports marketing career. And I think those nuggets of advice, because like I said, it was priceless. As I recall, you walked me to one side of the stadium and there was just kind of barren and there wasn't much there. Maybe there was a playground or a monument. I can't remember. And it was these crazy streets bordered it. And you said, hey, we're going to, give me 10 years. We're going to change that. And I'm like, man, that is one heck of a vision. And it's similar to what Mr. Cousins did with East Lake Golf Club and the East Lake community out there. And you're seeing it in a lot of other communities. Obviously, Mr. Blank and the West End and all that in Atlanta. But that you've hit on another topic, and we'll have to have you back on to talk about, because, Steve, my mantra is goodwill is good business. And I think sports is a universal language to bring all of mankind together to do that. So we really appreciate your time and energy. And I hope you hear from some of our kids. And again, likewise, I hope to see you soon.
All right, Vince. Take care, brother.
Thanks, Vince. Hope you enjoyed today's virtual class. We'll be back soon with another edition of Melt University 2020.